In this lesson, we'll learn about the principal tool of attainment in the methodology of Kabbalah. We'll learn about the building of an additional sense, a sixth sense, that enables a person to sense and enter an upper reality called spirituality. It's a method of how to enter the spiritual world. First, let's quickly look at what we learned in the last lessons. All right, in the last lesson, we looked at the creation of the creature in 4 phases, and we saw that creation starts with thought, the thought of the creator, the thought of creation, which is to create a creation and then fill it with love. Okay, and immediately we see a thing begin to emerge within the creation, which is a desire to receive. The Creator creates a creature which is designed for the sole purpose to receive what is being bestowed. And there's a naturalness about this in which the quality of the light is of a nature that the creature has a natural desire to receive what is being bestowed. Okay, and we see that there's a new perception wherein the creature created by the creation perceives something different. It begins to recognize the difference between itself as the receiver and the creator as the giver, or it which bestows. So because there is a will to receive, and that is its pure nature, and it cannot yet give because that is not the creature's nature, which is us, originally designed as pure ego, and just as a vessel to receive, and that vessel would be called a clef. This vessel, like a bowl or a cup, it's also called a cleave, as in an indention or cleavage, one might think of, or cleft, like a cleft chin. An indention, a place in which things can be placed into. So this cleave is designed to receive all which the Creator is willing, which is total abundance, to bestow. And there is a decision that the creature then is able to manifest, wherein they have a choice to receive what is being bestowed or reject what is being bestowed. So it decides that it will reject the light, but in this emptiness, a new discernment requires, and it discovers that its existence depends on the reception of the light, that it cannot exist in this harsh situation without receiving, and that it must accept a portion of the light. But it decides it'll only receive a small portion because here it has a perception that the Creator, the creative force, wants it to receive. So it accepts a small portion based upon the fact that the Creator wants to bestow it, because it is the Creator's desire for it to receive. So in this dual phase, it realizes an even higher aspect of the force that created it is that it wants to fill it with extreme delight. And this next phase here, this 4th phase, is unlike the other phases up to that point, not an action done by the Creator, but an independent desire. But this desire is not a desire for direct pleasure or delight. It realizes here at this point the statute of the Creator and wants that, and realizes that it's the receiver and how different it is from the Creator, the giver. So instead of wanting to do the doing of that, it now wants to have the equivalence of form to give, okay? The creation part. So here is where we find the creature at this point. It's made a restriction on the manner in which it receives. It will no longer receive for purely itself. It's determined that it will attain the quality opposite of its nature. It was created as a will to receive, but yet it determines that it will find a way to become like the opposite quality of what it was created. In other words, giving. So as it does this, if it can find a way to do this, then it begins to enter and build a system for itself of interaction with varying degrees of proportion between the will to receive and the will to bestow. And it rises as a result of gaining greater and greater equivalence of form, becoming more and more like that which it wants to become. It rises through a system called worlds. And these worlds are kind of interaction of the both interaction and correction of the Creator and the world as a whole. As it rises, it attains an inner quality of each of the worlds. These are Nefesh, Roh, Ishira, and the various worlds are established until such point that there is greater and greater equivalence bestowed into the creature, closer equivalence of form with the Creator itself. But it becomes an issue because it was created in the exact opposite phase as only a will to receive, because that's what we are, a will to receive. So how can we possibly become something totally opposite to our nature? Even if we know now what the purpose of creation is and its role in it, it seems as if we're locked, stuck, or that there's nothing we can do because we are created in a perfect way and can only use our existence as a means of reception. But it has to use the expansion of our egoistic properties to turn ourselves into giving, the complete opposite of what we were created to be. So we found out that the 5 senses that we have naturally prevent us from sensing anything outside of the box or our consciousness. And there's a barrier that is preventing particular information from coming into the program, the box. And the ego is always saying to itself, what is in it for me, as a quality of the will to receive. And above it is altruism, the capacity to give, to bestow. And in order to have the ability to sense this, which none of the other senses can, we have to build a program that is built upon same qualities as to what is built outside of it, or a 6th sense that is built out of a quality of giving, or desire to give, or desire to bestow. And so there is a screen that is manifested that allows for us to mechanically allow for that to happen. Now the word Kabbalah means how to receive, or the proper way of reception. The method of Kabbalah is completely practical. It shows us precisely how we can take our creation the nature of our creation and turn it into a proper mode of reception, a transformed, corrected mode of reception that becomes giving. All right. Now, right now, when we receive into the world will to receive, we find that our experiences are very limited. The will to receive can never be filled. Let's say there's a desire for a piece of cake, wonderful cake, strawberry shortcake with whipped cream and sauce. And there's a need, an idea, a lack of this. Now, as soon as we get this cake and begin to consume the cake and it touches the desire, then the desire lessens. It's not permanent. It lives and then it dies. Because pleasure is only felt at the junction point between a need and its filling. The moment that the filling passes beyond the need, it can no longer be felt. So the desire dies or weakens. What Kabbalah wishes to teach is to find a correct way of receiving. That way is that even if there's something that is desired and is filled, that filling will never go out. That feeling will never go out. And the desire will expand, and the more that the bestow enters, the more the desire grows as well. And the only way that that can happen is through the dual phase. This reception is then done not for us, but to fulfill the thought of creation. It's done for the Creator. So this reception now becomes a form of giving, Kemel. So how do we do this? How can we achieve this? The Kabbalist understands a particular analogy. There's a story, very profound, in how to overcome it. It's profound because it gives us the real nature of what we are, something we don't notice. There are two friends. And one friend decides to make a dinner for his friend. And he thinks about everything that his friend loves. He thinks about the food, the wine that he might like, the amount of the food, the way the food should look, the ambiance of the presentation. Every aspect of how he might be able to please his friend with this fantastic, perfect meal. The friend arrives, comes in, and sees bestowed before him this absolute feast. And the first response is want to eat everything right away, because of course that's exactly everything he wants. But then another thought strikes him that his friend, the host, the giver, is giving and he's only there to take. And there becomes this feeling of shame, because he realizes that the giver is before him and he has nothing to give. Realizes that his friend has done everything for him and he's only there to take, and overcome by shame. You know what it's like when someone gives you some big gift that you hadn't expected, and you have this kind of hesitation of, I can't accept this. This quality of shame, the perception of being the receiver, or purely the receiver. He won't eat. And his friend, the host, says, but you don't understand. I spent all this time just thinking about you and what you would enjoy, how we would enjoy this together. And now, if you don't take what I've given you, this whole meal will be ruined for me. I'll get no pleasure because you won't enjoy it. And so the guest, at that point, realizes that in this situation, he really has the control. That he's not just the receiver. If he can realize while he's eating this food that he's only doing it to fulfill the friend's desire, and he doesn't feel ashamed. He can enjoy it. He can go ahead and taste it and partake of it as he first wanted to when he first saw the food. Because he realizes that his friend will only be satisfied or receive enjoyment by seeing him enjoy the food. So it's now starting to understand the reciprocal nature. The guest not only feels the delight of the food, he also understands the thought of the host. Because now he's thinking the same thing towards the host that the host is thinking towards him. I do this to fulfill completely my friend. He couldn't be more satisfied that I eat this because that was his entire goal. So I will fill him completely by my receiving and my enjoying. So this miracle, which is nature, of being able to take the will to receive and turn it into the will to bestow, the thought to bestow. The action didn't change, but the inner action, the inner intent, the intention, why, behind why the guest took the food has changed. And it makes the reception giving. This is how that intention how that intention to receive in order to bestow to the host can be turned into a sensor called the screen, and how it allows the person, the creature, us, to attain the levels of bestow that are the spiritual world. Here is our will to receive, our vessel, our cleave. Now this cleave is filled with desires, with hungers, with wants of the meal, of the pleasure, of what is being bestowed. And what the creator, the host, wants to give to the creature exists outside in the area or realm of bestow. And always the light presses on us and wants to fill us with 100% unbounded delight, but only to the degree in which we can receive the light on its terms through giving can we allow it to enter into the cleave. Otherwise we have no sensation of receiving or the pleasure of what is being bestowed. So in order to enjoy the pleasure of the meal in terms of spirituality, the screen, which is an intent, is placed upon the entry of the cleave, the will to receive. The intent is not to receive for myself. And once that's there, all of these other things can begin to be sensed, can begin to be regulated, and we can determine what the experience inside the will to receive will actually be. So the first thing that we feel in the meal, in the receiving, strikes the screen, the barrier. Now, and if the creature can accept that amount into it in order to only to please the host, then it experiences it as a first course of the meal, like the soup. And if it can maintain that, not for self, but only for the host, then a portion of the light actually enters into the cleave. And not only the portion of the taste and delight, which must be fulfilled, but also the sensation, the intention of the host in giving that thing to the creature, us. So 20%, let's say, will enter that first fifth of the stomach, as an analogy, and the rest of it will be rejected, placed aside. Not that the pleasure isn't felt, it's just that a greater pleasure supersedes a smaller pleasure. The cleave is not concerned about that. The only thing that is paid attention to at this point is the thought of the creator. So 80% will not be felt, but only 20% will be perceived. Now, if a further amount can be accepted in order to fulfill the thought of the host, then 40% fills, and only 60% is then rejected or placed aside. So what happens in here is that the light of the creator, the thought, the level of attainment, of similarity within the Kli itself, within the creature, us, that part of us that becomes like the creator begins to grow, begins to expand. This is the means by which we grow a soul. The first light, the first 20%, that's the light of Nefesh, the first level of soul. Here, if this intention matches the intention on the of our Creator, of giving on the second level, the Ru'of, enters the cleave. This is not just knowledge. This is not some kind of intellectual thing. This is an actual similarity of form with the Creator, that what is inside of us is a direct perception of what exists outside of us. The sixth sense now is telling us what the spiritual object actually is. Not that it's super solid, but it is a thought in the Creator's intention toward all of creation. And when this continues to grow, where now 60% becomes filled and only 40% is rejected or not felt, a new light enters. This light is called Neshama, and a deeper understanding of the Creator's thought, a greater similarity in terms of our hunger. We've passed the main course and accepted for value of pleasing the host until we get to the dessert, let's call it, or the liqueur, okay, afterwards, and we get to the level of Chaya, which is a broader sense, and then Yahida, which is an even broader sense of fulfillment. And here, the creature has reached complete similarity of form with the Creator because it instituted its own thought of creation. It has an independent desire that does not depend on the external delights, but only on the thought of the creature to do something equal to that of the thought of the Creator. So by doing this, the creature, us, rises from below, upward, across all the 125 steps that are all, by the way, that are made up of phases, which are exactly this process. All of these are transmutations from what we were originally formed as. And this is called a Rosh, which is a head, and here Guth, which is body. And by having a Rosh, that means through an independent desire, the creature can now determine what the reality inside the vessel will be, the quality of their world, the quality of delight, and all this done for the good of life as a whole, not for self. Ego is then cast aside. This is how we can think of this. We receive spiritual desire directly from above. To feel them, we need a special sense called a screen. As soon as man acquires a sense, we begin to feel pleasure through it. The pleasure is called supreme light. It enters our world. The desire to possess that is called soul. The light is not felt unless we can acquire an additional sense to receive that. All elements, the light, which is pleasure, the screen, the means of perception, the soul, the receiver, are in no way connected to the physical body. Hence, it doesn't matter if man has a body or not. As man establishes a contact with the supreme light, we begin to correct ourselves so that we might be fulfilled. And it is natural that the consecutive filling is called spiritual ascent. The body is only a means of spiritual advancement. Otherwise, it has no value. Small pleasure cannot be felt at all in comparison to the larger. Therefore, although a Kabbalist lives within the same world as we do, he's actually already in the spiritual world. Of this world, but not. In this world, but not of this world.